Hi, I'm Bob. Welcome back to the exercises section for Chapter 5, Consumer Welfare and Policy Analysis. We have reached the last part of deriving labor supply curves. Thank you for joining me and continuing your excellent work on this course. Let's get started. Here's exercise 4.1. Under a welfare plan, poor people are given a lump sum payment of $L. If they accept this welfare payment, they must pay a higher marginal tax rate on anything they earn. If they do not accept the welfare payment, they do not have to pay the tax on their earnings. So that whether an individual accepts welfare depends on the individual's tastes. We use the indifference curve budget constraint diagram for leisure and labor to illustrate the consumer's choices before and after the welfare payment. The original budget line is L1 with a slope of minus W. W is the wage rate. The new budget line with the welfare payment is L2 with a slope of minus W over 2. It becomes flatter because the effective wage becomes half. Without the payment, the consumer can buy bundle E1, where her original budget line is tangent to the indifference curve I1. Suppose after paying the tax, the consumer can still purchase the same bundle with the lump sum payment of $L. The lump sum payment shifts the budget line L2 upward to L3. L3 is parallel to L2 and goes through bundle E1. If the consumer has the usual shaped indifference curves that are convex to the origin, she can choose bundle E2 on a higher indifference curve I2. The consumer is better off with the lump sum payment, although she pays a tax. If we don't know whether the payment makes her able to buy the original bundle, we cannot use the above analysis. We consider a general case. L1 is the original budget line. L3 is the new budget line with tax and payment. The opportunity set with the original budget line is the triangle area below L1. The opportunity set with the payment and the tax is the area below the budget line L3. If the consumer works long hours and her original bundle is E1, then her new bundle is E2. She is worse off after the payment and the tax. If she works fewer hours and her original bundle is E3, then she is better off by choosing the bundle E4 after the payment and the tax. So whether she accepts the welfare payment depends on her taste between work and leisure. Let's do exercise 4.2. If an individual's labor supply curve slows forward at low wages and bends backward at high wages, is leisure a given good? If so, is leisure a given good at high or low wage rates? A given good has two characteristics or requirements. Demand for the good falls when its price decreases, other things equal. And it is an inferior good in the first place. The wage rate can be seen as the price of leisure. In the demand for leisure diagram, the part from E2 to E3 could be a given good. The demand curve shows that as leisure's price increases from W2 to W3, the demand for leisure rises from N2 to N3. However, leisure is not an inferior good on this part. As the wage rate increases from W2 to W3, the income goes up. The substitution effect of the price increase is negative. The consumer consumes less leisure. The income effect must be positive and dominate the substitution effect so that the total effect is an increase in leisure consumption. In other words, the consumption of leisure increases as income increases. Leisure must be a normal good on this part. The two requirements of the given good are not satisfied simultaneously. Leisure is not a given good. Let's solve exercise 4.3. The consumer, who can currently work as many hours as she wants at a wage of W, chooses to work 10 hours a day. Her boss decides to limit the number of hours that she can work to 8 hours per day. So how her budget constraint and choice of hours change? Is she unambiguously worse off as a result of this change? Why or why not? Her budget constraint is L1, and she chooses bundle E1, where her budget line is tangent to the indifference curve I1. She works 10 hours at E1. If the work hour limit is 8 hours, she has to choose the corner solution, E2. She is unambiguously worse off because she's on a lower indifference curve, I2. The analysis is based on the assumption of the usual shaped indifference curves that are convex to the origin. Let's find answers to exercise 4.4. Originally, when he could work as many hours as he wanted at a wage W, the consumer chose to work 7 hours a day. The employer now offers him W for the first 8 hours in a day and an overtime wage of 1.5 W for every hour he works beyond a minimum of 8 hours. So how his budget constraint changes? Will he necessarily choose to work more than 7 hours a day? Would your answer be different if he originally chose to work 8 hours? It depends on the shape of the indifference curves. He chose the optimal bundle E1 initially. The offer creates a kink in the budget constraint. It does not affect his choice in the left graph. But if his indifference curves look as in the middle graph, he can choose bundle E2 on a higher indifference curve and work more hours. If he originally chose to work 8 hours, as shown in the right graph, then he will necessarily choose to work more hours as long as he has the usual shaped indifference curves. Let's solve exercise 4.5. Jerome moonlights. He holds down 2 jobs. The higher paying job pays W, but he can work at most 8 hours. The other job pays W star, but he can work as many hours as he wants. So how Jerome determines how many total hours to work? Now, suppose that the job with no restriction on hours was the higher paying job. How do Gerald's budget constraint and behavior change? We use the leisure-labor choice diagram to find the answer. The two jobs have different wage rates. The original budget line, L1, has a kink at 8 hours of work. When he works more than 8 hours, his wage rate is lower than his first 8 hours. He has two jobs, so his optimal bundle E1 is on the flatter part of the budget line. He works more than 8 hours. Now, suppose the higher paying job no longer has a restriction on hours. His budget constraint becomes a straight line, L2. His optimal bundle will be E2, where his new budget line, L2, is tangent to a higher indifference curve, I2. Whether he works more or less depends on the substitution and income effects of the wage increase. He consumes less leisure and works more because leisure's price increases, which is the substitution effect. However, the income effect makes him consume more leisure and works less because his purchasing power increases with the pay raise. If the substitution effect is larger than the income effect, then he works more than before. E2 is to the left of E1. If the income effect dominates the substitution effect, then he works fewer hours than before. E2 is to the right of E1. Let's solve exercise 4.6. Taxes during the 14th century were very progressive. The 1377 poll tax on the Duke of Lancaster was 520 times that on a peasant. A poll tax is a lump sum tax per person, which is independent of the hours a person works or earns. Use a graph to show the effect of a poll tax on the labor-leisure decision. Thus, knowing that the tax was progressive tells us whether a nobleman or a peasant, assuming they had identical tastes, worked more hours. A lump sum tax shifts the budget line downwards. Suppose the nobleman has a higher wage rate than the peasant. The larger lump sum tax on the nobleman shifts his budget line down by more amount than it does on the peasant. For the nobleman, his budget constraint shifts from Ln1 to Ln2, and his optimal bundle changes from En1 to En2. For the peasant, his budget line shifts from Lp1 to Lp2, and his optimal bundle changes from EP1 to EP2. We know that if leisure is a normal good, both the nobleman and the peasant will consume less leisure and work more hours because of the income effect. But who works more is hard to tell. It depends on the shape of the indifference curves and the difference between the tax. Noblemen usually have long labor income, so their initial budget line should be in a higher position, which makes the question more complicated. Thank you for watching this video and subscribing to my YouTube channel. See you next time.